I'm Tracy Goldizen, the editor of the Rio Rancho Observer. In the coming days, we will be bringing you candidate interviews for the Rio Rancho Public School Board, as well as some representatives from the district discussing the bond issue that's going to be on the ballot November 7. So please join, listen, and cast your vote. Hello, everybody. This is Tracy Goldizen, editor of the Rio Rancho Observer, and we are here with Ramon Montaño. Did I get that correct?
Yeah, Ramon Montaño. You got that right.
He is running for Rio Rancho Public Schools Board of Education, District 4.
Yes.
So why don't you just go ahead and introduce yourself and your background?
I'm Ramon Montaño. Thank you, Tracy, for inviting me here today. This is truly an awesome experience to be able to utilize this tool right here to get our message out. Ramon Montaño. I live in Rio Rancho. I served in the Rio Rancho School Board previously as board president as well, and as a board member of the Rio Rancho School District. I also have served as the past president of Mexico School Boards, and since I got elected back in 2001 originally, and then I served in Las Vegas, New Mexico for 3 terms, and then I moved up to Rio Rancho and was able and honored to have served there with the Rio Rancho School Board of Education. But throughout my years since 2000, I've been advocating for public school students in school districts at the legislature. I haven't missed a legislative session, I think, in 22 years. So, I continuously to work with superintendents across the state, our local legislators, and local school board members on improving the quality of education here in New Mexico and trying to bring out some of the issues that we face as public school districts and how we tackle those issues together, because it's a group effort. But, I've been living in Rio Rancho now since 2008. I bought a house there in 2008, and my kids attended Rio Rancho Public Schools, and my youngest is in elementary school there at Rio Rancho Schools. So that's why I decided to look at running again for the Board of Education.
Okay. And is there anything specific, aside from your children being involved, that made you want to throw your hat in the ring for this race?
I'm going to be honest with you. That's a great question. I've been following the legislative process for the past couple of years now. I've always have. But there's a huge dynamic now that's changing at the legislature, right? Mm-hmm. And it's very concerning to me of how they're envisioning what public schools should look like, what they should be doing, what they're not doing. And a lot of those discussions are happening on the interim. And I feel that some of it is factual, some of it's not. Mm-hmm. But in putting in laws that negatively hinder what public schools are all about, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't want to deteriorate what public schools do, because it represents a huge base of New Mexico students. And I think they do a great job providing mm-hmm. education. Is there room for improvement? Yes. But this past session mostly was very concerning, because you saw both sides of the aisle looking at how we could provide revenues to private schools and charter schools. Yet that comes from the same coffers of the public schools, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm not opposed to kids going to charter schools or public schools, but we have to have the conversation, how are we going to fund those? All right. They can't come from the same piggy bank, right? Mm-hmm. We have to look at avenues, how we're going to properly fund them and what we can do to improve public schools. It shouldn't be, let's pull your kids out of these schools because their opinions are failing or they have issues that they're dealing with, but and look at funding them at private schools, because majority of our schools in New Mexico are rural schools. Mm-hmm. So if you live in Springer, New Mexico, where are you going to drive to Santa Fe for a private school? Some of that stuff doesn't make sense. But it also, and what's concerning to that is it impacts Rio Rancho School District. Yeah. Because we rely on those tax dollars as well. Mm-hmm. So when we start pulling those dollars, it's very concerning for us. So I felt that it was important to jump back in, get involved, and be a real strong advocate for our community, because I think our community deserves it. Mm-hmm. And I think a board member should be, they're elected by the people. They need to be that voice for the school district, especially at the legislature.
Okay. And then, you discussed, your extensive background with previous boards and whatnot. Is there anything specifically that you have done in the past that you think will lend yourself to the issues that the district is facing now?
Yes, not only that, but through the New Mexico School Board Association, they provide trainings for school board members across the state to understand what their roles and responsibilities are. And there's three: hire and fire superintendent, policy, procedure, and the budget. Those are three statutory duties that boards are responsible by law. Not operational, not running the day-to-day operations, staying in the weeds. And the biggest component of that is the budget. And I feel that's where we're lacking, is understanding how those tax dollars are being spent, where they're being spent, and whether or not those areas that we're spending those monies, how is it improving the student outcomes? We're not having those discussions, right? And the budget process should be a whole year process. This can't be quarterly meetings for a couple hours to talk about certain things. We have to have a yearly process, so when we take the budget to the state, we have an understanding of what we're funding, how we're funding it, and how we're going to sustain it. And whether or not these programs are actually benefiting or not really doing much, that we could allocate those dollars elsewhere. We need to have those discussions. And that's why that's what really got me to want to run again, because at the legislature, that's what they're saying. We're giving you guys enough money. Either you're not using it correctly, you're not technically misappropriating where they're wasting tax, but that's what they're really saying in a nice way. And I don't think schools are really doing that, but I don't think they're having the real discussion of how their dollars are being spent. How do you justify these positions in district office? How do you justify that salary in that position? And if that position is needed at the top level, how does that impact student outcomes? How does that trickle down to the classroom? Those are the discussions we have to have, and we're not having those.
Okay. What do you think the Rio Rancho district is doing right? And what do you think are the most pressing issues and concerns moving forward?
You know, we're blessed to have the District of Rio Rancho Public Schools. I had the honor to serve with my colleagues on the board, work closely with Dr. Cleveland before and as board president. We have a phenomenal leader in Dr. Cleveland. We have great staff. Our teachers are wonderful. People are wanting to move to Rio Rancho because of the quality of schools that we have. So they've continued to make a mark in our state of what they're doing right. I think having a vision and working with the staff, collaborative with the staff to make those changes has helped Rio Rancho become the successful district they are today. The concern that I see moving forward is budgeting with the changes that are occurring after COVID, right? We had a lot of issues during COVID. Our schools closed, which negatively impacted the state because it took those kids who needed that foundation, that structure to get educated. There's huge gaps there. On top of that, we're seeing a huge increase in behavioral issues in our schools that we hadn't seen before. We had a few cases. Now we're seeing it throughout the district of students who are having real crisis issues that are needing interventions. So that disrupts the learning of the current class that they're in. So right there, for me right now, I think that's our major pressing issue, is how we deal with those behavioral issues that keep not only that student who's having that crisis at the moment, but everybody else safe, and knowing that when they go to the classroom, they're going to get a good quality education, have time for learning, and that each kid will be safe while in there. On top of that, we have to look at giving teachers a little bit more time on lesson planning and being able to take time so they can plan, grade, and do all that without having to take that stuff home. They're still being burdened by that and having to take a lot of their work home. So those are things through the budget that we need to look at, how we fund those to fix those problems that we have. There's solutions to them, and I think other school districts across the state and the country are doing that by hiring licensed therapists, not just for the special ed program students that we have, but for the other population dealing with anxiety or separation anxiety or depression or behavioral issues that our teachers aren't qualified to deal with. So I think those are the areas that we really have to look at, because I've talked to parents saying we're moving our kids out because we don't want to have to deal with that. I don't want to have my child dealing with those social, emotional issues they're having to see every day.
Right.
So.
And then how do you think the district can best reconnect with families who maybe have become disenfranchised with the district, whether it's from what you just mentioned or being shut down for COVID or other issues? How do you reach those families and get them back?
Well, it's about being transparent, right? And I think they try to, as a parent, I get information and update. Not everybody has access to, email, not as much as we have our cell phones and all the gadgets and computers. It's about being transparent about their school district alone, right? And that's why I think the board's important on being transparent of what it takes to run that school, right? What are the deficiencies? What are the obstacles? We can't be afraid not to talk about our problems. And I know a lot of schools don't like to do that publicly because it shines a negative light. But if we don't talk about them, other people are going to spread the message around of what actually, or they perceive what's going on. So I think about being transparent. I think having more conversations with our parents at the school level of what it takes to run the schools, what the schools are doing really well, and then some of the issues we're tackling and what we're doing to tackle those issues. We can't be afraid to talk about those issues. I'll give you an example. Dropped off my daughter first day of school, elementary school. They gave us the tours, the do, the don'ts of what the rules are of the school, and then they brought us to the cafeteria. And then there they were explaining to us, we got to raise money, $25,000 to buy furniture for the library. And as people start, why do we have to spend money for that? Why are we raising money for this, that? And that's, it sends people who don't understand, right, are questioning, well, why? It's a new school. Why are we having to do this? Or why can't we raise money for STEM or for reading or other extracurricular programs? So those are the conversations we need to have with people and say, this is why we're doing this. This is a problem we're going to solve. I think for the most part, they would appreciate that and have a better understanding. And also through having those discussions, parents will have a way of who are in need of help, those students in need, find avenues to either get school-related resources or outside help to help those students. So I think just be more transparent at each individual school with those parents, get them engaged and making them feel more welcome. With the COVID pandemic and with safety and security now, it's very difficult. Not even you have to go and check in and do all that stuff. But I think it's still possible to do all that and make it inviting despite making sure everyone's clear to get in the school, making sure we're following safety protocols. We just got to continue to do more of that.
Okay. And then you kind of touched on, there's, more and more concerns with behavior issues, and the district this year instituted a new behavior policy along with a new attendance policy. What are your thoughts on those?
I think it's important to address those concerns publicly to the parents. We get emails all the time, whether, about kids missing school, how important it is for kids to be there. I think it's truly important that our kids are in school. They have to be there. There's gaps that there's learning gaps that were hit during COVID. Teachers are trying to catch up, and our kids are resilient. Our kids are amazing. Our staff is amazing there at Rio Rancho, and I know they're really working diligently. But I think it's important that we educate the importance of why our kids need to be in school, and the importance of them missing school and the negative impacts that has on that student, getting him prepared to go to the next level. Right. Education wise. So I agree kids need to be in school.
Okay. And then, there's a lot of talk locally, nationally about parents' rights in schools. Are there any circumstances in which you feel issues with a student should be kept from a parent, and what would those be?
I think any issue with a student should go to a parent. Parents should have a right to know what's going on with their student. Okay. A lot of times, and let's be frank, we live in a great community, right? And if you see every morning, we have a lot of people traveling out of Rio Rancho to go to work. There's working people. And I coach basketball for Rio Rancho. I've been there 10 years. And I see some of the struggles that parents have. Maintaining 2 jobs, in some cases, trying to support their families, doing everything they can to ensure that their kid gets a quality education, making sure they have everything they need to be successful, and single parents working 2 jobs, and parents, honing down on that. Those are important things to know, because some of them, it's not that they don't want to be there, right? But they're having to put food on their table. They're having to, keep the heat on and paying their grocery bills and medications that they need to be informed. So I as a parent, I want to be informed of what's going on with my child. Right. And I should have that right to know what's going on with my child. So I feel that's very crucial.
Okay. And then, recently at a board meeting, there's been some pushback on the policy regarding neutrality on political and social issue messaging in the classroom and whatnot. What are your thoughts on that?
That's a touchy subject, right?
It is.
But I look at it as a board member. We represent all students, right? Whatever their background is, whatever they define themselves, it's whether you're Hispanic, African American, Native American, we have to be there to represent everybody. And there's a fine line that we could navigate that process without getting politics involved.
Right.
Everything's become so politicalized right now, right? You got to pick a team. You got to, it's this team or that team, and there's no middle ground anymore in discussions. When I grew up, I remember, my dad, staunch Republican, bringing Democrats over and having those discussions about how to improve the community. And whether they disagreed or not, it was never with anger or animosity. They shook hands. They agreed to disagree. But at the end of the day, they were fighting for the same cause, to improve the outcomes of our community. So that's what I look at it. It doesn't have to be one way. We have to communicate, listen to both sides,
Right.
without forming just, I'm stuck with this, because a lot of times we can learn from one another if we sit down and listen to each other. So I feel that as a school board, that's what we need to do, because the kids that we represent aren't Democrat or Republican. They're just not. And I say that at the legislature every time. You make all these bills Republican and Democrat related talking points, but at the end of the day, the people we're representing in the classroom, they're not Democrat. Their parents might be, but they're students. So we have to navigate those issues. And times are changing, yes, and we don't always agree with those things, but we have to take time to try to understand where they're coming from.
Okay. What do you think the Rio Rancho district needs to do to remain one of the top performing districts in the state?
That's a great question. I think, and I just was asked that question this morning by someone there at the gas station, and putting gas to come here. We have to ensure that the board's doing their due diligence on their priorities, right? We have a great superintendent, but the board is responsible for their 3 statutory duties. It's not up to the superintendent to do the board's responsibilities. It's not fair to Dr. Cleveland, right? And the respect that she has across the state, not only at the state level, but the national level. Her and I attend a lot of the same meetings or in the same hearings at the same time. We have to prioritize what we're doing with the budget to ensure we can sustain what we're doing long term while bringing new innovative learning techniques to our schools, right? Some of our schools have brought up the ideas of doing some of the things that charter schools and private schools are able to do, and that are moving kids to those other areas, to being creative of what we've done in the past. So that's what I think the board's responsibility should do, is how we prioritize that, how we look long term of how we're going to sustain what we've been doing with the budget that we currently have in place. And we have to have those discussions. And I think that's what's lacking right now. I think this current board meets every quarter on the budget. I don't know how much you're going to get every quarter and how much you can discuss in a couple-hour meeting every quarter on how you get to that vision, right? So for us to continue to sustain, we got to be vocal as a board, working with our current legislative body, and at the national level as well with our DC lawmakers on how we continue to sustain that. As you know, people are moving to Rio Rancho. We're seeing more infrastructure. Along with that, we see a lot of traffic issues. I know around the schools, we're starting to see a lot of traffic issues. So we have to start prioritizing what we see, a long-term vision, and how we continue to do that.
Okay. And then on a broader note,
Sure.
How do you propose to move New Mexico's education ranking up, with it being so low at or near the bottom in the national rankings? How do we improve that?
That's a great question. Once again, that's what's happening now in the interims. Legislators are meeting, LESC, LEFCs are meeting, saying we're giving you guys enough money, but we're not seeing the student outcomes. We're not seeing the outcomes overall of we're last, what we're doing. And I think we've continued to throw a lot of money at education, but I think it's time that we work with our legislative body. Our school boards have to come together to look at different techniques on how we improve those scores, right? What we're doing. And I know they're going to evaluate everyone up to at their grade level. I know PED has had its trouble over the years with the continuous change order of leaders in the PED. That hasn't worked. We have to, unfortunately, the state needs to do their work as well and look at ways of how we're going to improve student outcomes in the state. You see different pockets throughout the state, different school districts, Gadsden, Rio Rancho. You see what they're doing to improve their. I think we don't have to create the will. I just think we have to improve some of those things that are already in place with working with our local schools. And a lot of times everyone's out there kind of doing their own, trying to do what they can to maintain their school districts. But that's something that we have to really look at, working with our state leaders. But once again, it gets politicalized up there in Santa Fe. It's a Republican, Democrat, and we can no longer have that tension anymore if we're going to really hone down and improve our outcomes. CTE is one of those, career technical education programs, how we fund those to get kids ready to go to the workforce, to fill the jobs that are vacant here in the state. There's a lot of things that we can do to start working with those, especially at the early pre-K. They've done pre-K to get our kids, with literacy and math and science. But we have to have those discussions where we keep politics out of it and really hone down. But it starts with the PED. There's some dysfunction there with the amount of change, and I think our leaders are now trying to tackle that at the state level.
Okay, that's all the questions I had for you. Is there anything else you want to touch on that we haven't covered yet in regards to your candidacy?
Well, I'm available for any conversations that people want to have. I'm running because I see the importance of this position. I see the importance of how Rio Rancho has impacted our students here in our community and how great our district is. But to keep that, we need to ensure we have leaders in place who are willing to tackle that issue. I'll give you an example. December 22nd, before they went on break, their facilities director gave a presentation that there was over almost $380 million of needs around the district. With a $3 million budget she had to do with that. Those are concerns that I have long term, because as we build new schools, they're wanting to talk about building new schools. We have to really hone down our priorities, see how we pay for these, because that comes from taxpayers' money, that comes from state money, state and federal dollars. We have to be transparent with that on how we do this, because my concern is if we don't take care of the deficiencies we have, that's going to erode the monies we have for other things, and we have to have those discussions openly. So I think it's important that people start asking those questions of their board members. What are you doing to improve the infrastructure around the schools, safety and security around the schools, and those extracurricular, educational programs that we need to enhance, reading, science, and math, along with CTE programs within our community to improve our student outcomes. We don't have a lot of say-so what goes on in Santa Fe, right?
Right.
We just don't. We can control what we do here with the money that we have here, but we have to be more transparent. And what I like to see is I would like to have meetings on what it costs to run Rio Rancho High School, what goes into that, and what the deficiencies are there. Cleveland, Joe Harris, all these schools, so that we have a true understanding of what it's going to take to keep them up and running. They're safe. We're providing the quality education that we need there, and that we're being able to sustain those. Because as more development, we're building houses like crazy. How are we going to deal with the overcrowding of classrooms right now that we're seeing in some areas? What we're doing to deal with the transportation void that we're dealing with in Rio Rancho, we're running in the red again. There's solutions to the problems, but we have to prioritize. And that's what the board's responsibility is to do, is prioritize that budget. And I think that's the one thing I want voters to understand is we need to hold those people accountable, right? And the turnouts are low.
Right.
So if few hundred votes could win an election, and it's an important position, because we do not want to erode what's been built already there. And like I said, we have a lot of people wanting to come to Rio Rancho Public Schools because of the quality education they're getting there.
Right. Okay. Well, unless you have anything else to add, I think that's going to wrap things up here.
Okay.
Thank you so much for joining us and coming out and talking with us about these issues.
Yes.
And we just want to remind our readers and our viewers, listeners, to get out and vote November 7 or before.
Yes, get out and vote, and do your research on your candidates. I think it's important to that. And then my number is 505-514-3715. I think it's important for elected officials to have accessibility to the voters and the taxpayers. And if people like to call. And I urge people to to attend as many board meetings as they can to get a feel or to ask the important questions they have of their principals, because there's a lot of work in place that goes there. So,
All right.
thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you,
All right.
everybody.
Have a great one, everybody.
Bye-bye. Hello, everybody. I'm Ramon Montaño, your candidate for Rio Rancho Board of Education District 4. I come to you humbly asking you for your support as a former school board leader in the state and as a former president of the Rio Rancho School Board. I decided to run again because I have a student in elementary school, Rio Rancho School District, and not only do I want to be an advocate for my child, for my daughter, but for your child as well. We have a great school district in Rio Rancho, but there's still a lot of needs that our district has, and for us to be able to sustain the quality of education that we provide our students, we need strong school board leaders that are willing to tackle the tough issues of dealing with the school budget. The transparency of the school budget needs to happen on a regular basis to understand how we're going to fund our educational programs like CTE, to deal with overcrowding, to deal with infrastructure needs around the district. Right now, there's over $380 million of needs around the district to keep our buildings safe and healthy school learning environments for our children. Overcrowding in buses or short of bus routes, not enough bus drivers in our community. There's a lot of issues we have to tackle, but we have to start with the budget and prioritizing our priorities within the district and having a true understanding of what it entails and how we're going to fund these serious issues within our district. So that's why I decided to run for Board of Education. With the changes taking place in Santa Fe at the legislature, I think this is the most crucial time we're going to see in the next 2 years of how school boards are governing and how they expect school boards to govern at the local level. So I come to you and ask for your support. Some of the top priorities I have in my platform: safety and security always of our students, staff, and our community; career technical education programs, getting our kids ready to go to the workforce. Not all of our students are going to go to a 2-year or 4-year institution. And then mental health. Mental health, right now we're dealing with the crisis of students with behavioral issues in the classrooms and having to deal with that and looking at avenues of how we're going to not only deal with those issues and provide solutions for those students who are having those issues, but also keeping our other students safe and having a safe learning environment for them as well. So that's why I'm running for Board of Education. I ask that you consider me and give me a call if you have any questions. Ramon Montaño, 505-514-3715. Thank you for your support.
Election Day is Tuesday, November 7. Rio Rancho voting locations are Broadmoor Senior Center, Cielo Azul Elementary School, Cornerstone Community Church, Our Lady Queen of Angels, Puesta del Sol Elementary, Rio Rancho Middle School, Community of Joy Lutheran Church, Joe Harris Elementary, St. Francis Episcopal Church, Eagle Ridge Middle School, Mountain View Middle School, MLK Elementary, Rio Rancho Elementary, Rio West Business Center, and Sagebrush Plaza. Hours are 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Expanded early voting and same-day registration are available from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. at all polling locations. November 4 is the final day for early voting. Absentee voting is currently underway. Ballot requests must be made by November 2 and must be returned by 7 p.m. November 7. Ballot drop boxes are available from 8:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Monday through Friday at the Sandoval County Administration Building D and the Placitas Community Library. They will also be available during polling hours on Election Day. Please get out and vote, and thank you for watching and thank you for listening. This is again Tracy Goldizen, editor of the Rio Rancho Observer. Have a great day.